So in this video, I'm going to be showing how to do lost wax casting using 3D printing. So let's get started. So if you've seen previous videos of mine, I've done a lot of casting over the last couple months, and all different types of casting. So I did one that was tufa casting, where you carve into some compacted ash and make your piece. I did some sand casting, where you actually just take a piece and press it into it to make a shape, and then you can pour in your metal on top of that and make a casting. So now we're going to deal with lost wax casting, and it is one of the most expensive ones to get into and do, but it also produces the best results. And if you do it right, you can make a ton of things all at once instead of having to do one casting at a time, and everything will be extremely precise. But before we can do any of that, I need to go over a lot of tools and a lot of different things, so we got a lot to go over. So normally with lost wax casting, you use wax. Well, we're not going to be using wax for our main pieces. We're going to be using 3D prints. As you can see here, I have one that is already cast in silver, and this is a 3D print of the same piece. And it did a pretty good job making this. And don't get me wrong, you don't have to use a 3D printer to do this. You can learn how to do all the wax cutting and the crafting of using wax, but I'm not going to be going over that. So I actually didn't design this piece. It was designed and modeled and everything by Josh at Vidivic Arts. I didn't design or make any of the 3D models I'll be using in this. They were supplied to me by the actual designers themselves, and thank you for that. I will make sure to link to all of their stuff in the description, and they also have YouTube channels, so you can check them out as well. I'm sure you've seen the scarabs already, and I did do a casting of them, and it came out absolutely terrible, which is great. So the reason why these came out so bad is I wasn't using a castable resin. I wanted to test out other resins and see what happened. And this was the normal, like any cubic, just translucent green, and it came out terrible. And it just means that it leaves a lot behind when burning off. It doesn't actually burn off. And then this one was a lot better, but still not perfect. You could probably get away with using this one if you burn it off for longer or hotter or something. I'd have to play with it a lot more. But this is from a frozen, I think it was like an aqua green or something like that. And it looks pretty nice for the most part. Even the back of it looks pretty good. It looks like it also cracked the mold. And this one just completely destroyed. So I wanted to test out some stuff first to see if you can actually cast with non-castable resins, and you can kind of, but I don't suggest it. But in this video, we're going to be casting this Mandalorian ring that was made by a Lazy Watchsmith. And you can see I printed it quite a few times. And the reason for this is, one was a test to see if it would print out and what orientation. This is the same material I used to print this one. So if I use this, it would come out absolutely terrible. So this right here is a material that's used for making molds. So you print it in this, and then you put silicone around it, and then you can just inject your wax and make wax molds real quick, because the printing process of these take a while, like this one. This was printed, and this is a printable wax resin. So if you have something that is a one-off, or you just don't want to make a mold for it because you're going to make like 5 of them, then printing them is the way to go. It also allows you to customize things and make custom pieces for people, because you don't have to have a mold for each one. So say if you needed to put a name on the inside of this, you could print it with the name on it and it'd be done. So this is one of the things that we're going to be casting, along with one of these scarabs. They're both in the same material. So when it comes to printing itself, you can see that there is a big difference between these two. They were printed on 2 different printers, and the resolution of this one is not nearly as crisp as this one. Different settings, trying to figure out how these are going to come out. It actually took a bit to use this particular resin, which is a castable resin from Frozen, but I kept breaking them or they weren't printing right, so I messed with the settings a lot, and I'll make sure to leave the settings below for the printer that I got everything to work on. So you'll need to do some cleanup on the back of them to actually fix everything, because when you pull off your supports, you'll make little holes. This stuff is extremely brittle, and it'll just start breaking stuff. You can use wax to do this, and I already did on this one to fill in a lot of the holes, and there's a few here and there that will be fine. I could go through and fill them in more. but you can use files and everything to clean it all up. So for the material we're going to be using in this, it's going to be silver. So I melted down silver, and there's also a silver sprue from previous stuff, but this is what we're going to be using. And if you want to see how to make your own sterling silver like I did, there will be a link in the description and in a card on the top. So when doing lost wax casting, you have to use a flask like this, and there's different kinds obviously and different sizes. This is actually one that came with the vacuum casting machine, and it is a perforated one, meaning that you can actually get vacuum suction through the sides of this, because that is very important when doing the vacuum casting. And it comes with a base like this. What these are for is you fill them with plaster, and that plaster will be around whatever pieces you would like to cast, and then when you burn them off, it leaves a cavity that is an exact replica of whatever you put in there. And it's really important to have a material that burns out cleanly. As you saw in the ring that I already made, it has little bits of soot that were stuck in it, or different pieces that didn't burn off 100%, so it leaves imperfections, which you don't want. These ones right here that just look like pieces of pipe that's cut off, it's pretty much what they are, but they are different sized flasks as well. And you can use these. They're a lot cheaper than the perforated ones, but they don't work as well as a perforated one. That being said, you can still get it a lot done, and that's how I casted the first ring, was actually in this little one right here. These are the bases for them, and as you saw on this one, it has the base, and it would leave a nice little indent like this, so you have a good area to pour into. There are different kinds. There's cone ones like this that come up, and then there's some like this that are like a donut shape, and it allows you to put multiple pieces coming out of it, kind of like a tree or a bunch of trees put together, or you can put a single casting tree into this, and I'll show you more of that going forward. So this is one that I did earlier. It actually already has the plaster already done, and this is pretty much what it looks like. And that little bit in there will melt out, and that's where we would pour our metal. I will be ordering more of these bottoms because these are very old. A lot of the materials I got for doing this are hand-me-downs actually, and very old. And then some of it is brand new, like the actual vacuum caster and the furnace. I actually had one of them pull apart. They're rubber and they're like years and years old, so I expected them to go bad eventually. But like I said, I'll have everything in this video in the description, and everything will be labeled so you can pick out anything that you're looking for easily. So now we can move on to the actual vacuum caster itself. I'm basically just going over the tools needed before we actually start doing everything, because it goes by pretty quick, but I am also very new at this. I basically took this last week to learn how to do everything I'm showing you, to make sure I'm showing you properly, and that I can work through all the mistakes and everything without having to film them. So when it comes to the actual vacuum casting machine itself, it is pretty much a two-parter. There's this up here that has the weird little dome thing going on it, and this rubber mat here. This is so you can vacuum out your investment of all the air bubbles or your plaster. So when you pour it, it doesn't have any type of air in it. And it's really important not to have air bubbles, because they will get around the piece and they will make it so you'll have little like circles or beads all over the piece, and you don't want that at all. It's just more to clean off, and it can ruin some pieces. And then there's this end over here that has all these different adapters and O-ring things. This allows you to put all different types of flasks into it. So, like the one that it comes with, if you take this and put it in here, it fits perfectly, and it will allow it to get vacuum because it has the rubber seals. But if you want to use a solid flask, there are more adapters. And you can use this one with a tiny hole in it with the matching rubber gasket. And you can take your flask and put it on here like this and pour into it, and it will make suction and it will work. The suction will actually pull through the investment compound and pull your metal down into everything and not allow there to be any air bubbles or little pockets anywhere. And that's the beauty of vacuum casting. As you can see, I've already used this and it's already burnt a little bit of the gasket, and I need to play around with what temperatures I actually take this out of the kiln and put it on there, so it doesn't burn all the way through it. So another must-have is a furnace, and preferably one that has a timer or a programmer in it that will switch to different temperatures over a certain amount of time, because it is very important that you do a proper burnout cycle. This one allows you to do that, and it's very simple to set up. It's a little weird and not intuitive, but they have a great video that I'll make sure to link to that will teach you exactly how to set up your burnout. But it just has a little latch on the side that opens up, and you can see that it has the heating element coils, a thermistor so it knows how hot it is, so it can pay attention to everything, and there's a vent hole at the very top up there. It also will vent through the seal here because it's not 100% sealed. But if you needed to put your flask into here, there you go. If you do happen to get one of these, just keep in mind that it is very small on the inside, and this is a 3.5-inch flask. So if you put a 2.5-inch one in there, it will also fit, but you can fit one in there. I've tried to move it around so you can fit two. It doesn't really work. At least with it trying to be suspended in the air. And the reason why I even did that is when the wax burns out, it drips down, and I wanted it to just drip out of it instead of just sitting underneath it. But you can get away with it just being face down. So those are pretty much the must-have items. You need a furnace, and you need a vacuum caster to do the lost wax casting with the vacuum caster. There's also something called a spin caster, which I do not have, and I would prefer the vacuum caster over, but that is also an option if you want to look into that. Make sure that you have a ventilation setup. That is what that little tube up there is for, and it's hooked up to an inline fan that blows everything outside. You need this because you're burning stuff off, and it will make smoke, and it's not good to breathe in, for one, and it is a 3D printed resin that is being burnt off, so you really don't want to breathe that in. So make sure you have ventilation, or if you can do this outside, do that. With that said too, this goes for like 13 hours straight, so it's going to be going for a long time. So this is not an absolute must, but it does help a lot, especially if you are lacking in the torch power or don't want to use your torch gas to melt down metal. And this will get it to exactly where you need it to be. This is an electric furnace that will heat up your metals in this little crucible up here, which looks like this when it's not been cooked. And you can get different ones of these in different sizes, but that's pretty much it. You put metal into it, tell it to go to a certain temperature, an hour later or so, it will have molten metal inside of it. And you can pour it, and it just works. But you can also use a Smith's little torch or a larger torch, or even like a MAP gas torch if you're not dealing with too much metal, and use that to pour it into the vacuum caster once your burnout process is done and your flask is ready for taking all the metal. I'm going to be using this for sure because it just makes everything easier, and I have one, so why not use it? All right, so now we can actually start making our sprue tree. And we start with the little sprue base like this, and you need wax. I made all these little pieces of wax just out of some wax that I was given, and I made them in different shapes and different sizes, but this is the one I'm going to use for the actual sprue part. So it just fits directly in here. You can buy these already made to the right size and just put them in, cut them, and you're good to go. So that being said, you're dealing with wax. So I have this over here. This is a very old tool for basically melting your wax. You can also use a alcohol burning lamp. I'll put it on the screen right now. And other little tools like scalpels and stuff like that to do this. And it will allow you to attach everything to this. And it will also allow you to make your own wax pieces. But like I said, I'm not going into that. And bear with me because I have 1 week of experience doing this, and I've already gotten pretty good results off of just a couple castings. But I wanted to show you how to use all these tools at the bare minimum so you can get started if you wanted to get into this. So the point to this right now is to make this bit right here, which won't look nearly as bad as this one did because this is the first one I ever made. But we need to make a little tree that will hold our pieces so the liquid metal will basically flow through and down and then into everything. So think of this upside down when you pour in, and all of this is getting filled. So I'm going to attach one of the little scarab pendants first. So the only thing I'm going to need to do really is take a little bit of wax, and put it onto here. And let it cool. So I'm just going to take a little bit of the wax off here and heat it up, and then press this in there. And then heat it to the piece. And there we go. So the next thing I'm going to do is put this on there, but this is a ring and it is a little bit different. Also, it still has a lot of its imperfections on it, so I need to fix all those. I'm just going to go through and sand them down using some files and then fill any holes in with wax. You can see all the spots on there that need to be fixed, and then down here too. So you can also use rotary tools to help you clean up your piece. At least on these ones, you can pretty much get everything off and smooth it out. So for this ring, it's going to have metal coming in through here, coming out through the side, and then I'm going to make a custom sprue that goes to each part of the front part of the helmet. This is pretty much the piece I'm going to be using. All right, so here it is all connected. It was impossible to film just because my hands were in the way the whole time, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Basically connect it at the 4 different points, and you're good to go. So now I just need to attach a piece here, and then we can attach it to our tree. All right, so there we go. And we just need to attach that to the tree. And I'm going to do it at an angle probably like that, because you can't go too close to the edges. And I'm already calling a little close, so probably like that. All right, there we go. But I need to make sure that this is going to fit in my flask. So let's see. And yep, it does. And it has a little more than ½ an inch on the outside. Probably can't really see much in there, but yeah. So I'm just going to cast these two in this video, so I don't need all of this that's going up here, so I can cut that off. So yeah, that's pretty much the very basics of how to put them onto a tree. And now we're going to put them into the investment or the plaster. So first thing you need to do is actually put this on and make sure it's all nice and tight on there. And then we need to tape all this, because if you just pour plaster in here, it's just going to ooze out everywhere. So to do that, you want to use some packing tape or something like that. I'm going to be using some of this, which is gaffer tape. And it's not suggested for doing this, but the packing tape that I do have sucks and it leaks really bad. This doesn't. So I'll be getting more packing tape that is better, so I don't use this stuff, because it's like $30 a roll for this, and it's like a couple dollars for packing tape. But with it all taped off like that, it's still not good enough, because we're going to be putting this inside the vacuum chamber, and when you vacuum things, it makes them boil or bubble, and it will bubble over the top of this. So we're going to put another layer that goes up, kind of to catch it all and make sure it stays. So that should be good enough when we can start mixing up our investment now. All right, so when it comes to the actual investment or the plaster that you're going to be using, you buy it in large bags of like 10 to 40 pounds or more, and it's only usable once. So just keep that in mind when doing this, because if you do use it and you mess up or whatever, it's wasted and you have to just do it again. And how it's mixed is by weight, and there's a certain amount of water per X amount of grams. And we're going to be using 600 grams, and for every 100 grams you need about 40 milliliters of water. I already have that measured out. I just need to measure out the actual mixture of everything else, but that's what this little scale here is for. So what I'm going to do is take a bowl and put it on here, and it's going to tear itself out, but I don't need that right now. I'm going to be adding liquid to it, and it's going to be about 240 milliliters. And there's a little thing on the back here that I can turn to move this if I wanted to re-tear it out to 0, or you can just use math and add to whatever number you're at. So now that I have it at 0, I just need to make that go to, where is it, 600 grams by adding the powder of the investment in. I guess you are supposed to add the powder to the liquid. I don't know why. That's what the instructions said, so I'm going to do it. Also, make sure to wear a mask when doing this. I'm sure you have plenty of those now because the dust is not good to breathe. So there we go. And once you mix everything together, you have a time limit. So you got to act fast on this. So what I'm going to do is just mix this together. Make sure you're using containers and stuff that you're not going to use for food ever again. So instead of me doing that with just a spoon, I'm going to use a mixer. You're supposed to mix this for about 2 minutes by hand. I don't know how long you're supposed to mix it with a mixer since it's a lot faster. But just do it until you don't see any clumps in it anymore. Now we need to put it into the vacuum chamber. So you just take this and put it in here. And make sure the machine is turned to investment table and turn it on. So you'll see it bubbling up like that. And remove the pressure. There we go. So now all we have to do is pour this into our mold or our flask. And you're going to want to have your spoon at the ready to scrape anything extra in here. So that's what it looks like in there. And now it needs to go into the vacuum chamber. And this is why you put the tape higher up on it, because it expands over. Release the pressure. And now this needs to sit here without being touched or moved for about 2 hours. All right, so it's been well over 2 hours now, and you can see that this is all solid and all over the place. So this stuff is also really messy and will get all over the place and be really chalky, so just keep that in mind. This whole process is extremely messy. So now all we need to do is take all of the tape off of here. So there we go with it all off and the area cleaned up. I also scraped off the top layer right here just so it will sit flat. So now we need to take this off before putting this in the kiln, or this will burn off and you'll lose your piece. Because it's just rubber that's only meant to be on here when getting things set up. So there we go. And you can see that it leaves this nice little pour spout basically. And our wax is right there. So this is now 100% ready to go into our kiln, and we just need to put it in there. What you do is you flip it over so the wax side or the opening side is down, and place it inside. And like I said before, there's these little cubes that come with this that you can set it on so it's up in the air and it'll be able to drip the wax out. So one thing to keep in mind when using a little kiln like this is you do not want the metal flask to touch your elements, or it can short things out and catch fire or just break your machine. So be very careful of that. We just need to close this up and make sure to latch it. So we're just going to turn it on. This just plugs into your normal everyday outlet, so you're totally fine with powering this thing. And it should do something like this. I already have mine completely set, and I'm going to go over that after I start it to make some sense of what is going on. But you can program this to do different burnout cycles. And like I said before, there is a video that the company that actually makes these made explaining how to do all this and breaking it down in a way that is more understandable. So I will just start this by holding down the down arrow, and it will start running through my program. So this is going to take over 13 hours of cooking in here until it will be ready. And like I said before, make sure you have ventilation set up. All right, so let me go over the burnout time and everything real quick. Everything will have a different burnout time, and different materials you print with versus waxes will all have something different. So this is just for what I used. If you are looking for the correct burnout times, make sure to check whatever products you're using and find their spec sheets for them. So anyways, we start at room temperature, which is around 50 degrees. We'll ramp up to around 300 for 2 hours and ramp up for over a 6-hour period to 1,350 and hold it there for 3 hours. And then we can go ahead and start ramping it down over an hour to around 950 degrees and hold it there. I usually hold it for about an hour before taking it out. And then I have it hold another hour after that, just in case if I don't get it in time. So it is at a good casting temperature. So when it comes to the casting aspect of all of this, you need your silver. But you also need to know how much silver you need to use. And there is a way of weighing your piece and figuring out how much wax is there, and there's a calculation to how much silver it would be. But I didn't do that, and I don't know what the exact math for that is. But I know how much each one of my things come out to be when I make them into silver, because I made them in the past. So I can just overdo how much silver I'm going to use and have extra. And when casting, you're always going to have extra, because you're going to end up with pieces like this. So for the little scarab piece, it usually comes out to being around 0.6 troy ounces. And for the ring, I don't think it'll be much more than that. So we have 1 troy ounce so far. So we're going to need more silver for the tree and everything else. So I'm just going to weigh this and get a rough estimate. So this right here is almost an ounce by itself. I'm going to add another ½ ounce to that. So in total, we're going to use 2.5 ounces to do our casting. So to do that, I'm just going to throw this on there and start putting silver on it. So this should be good enough, and I can put all this into the crucible when it's cold. You can also add it when it's hot, but just be careful of dropping heavier stuff in there. You'll break the bottom of this out, and then you'll leak all inside of your furnace, and good luck getting it out. And now I can just put this back inside of the furnace. So with this back in here, I can just close it up and let it sit here. This is all off right now, and you'll notice that my hands are all black from touching that. It will get really sooty like that. You can wait until about an hour until your kiln is going to be ready to turn this on, and they should line up pretty well at melting down your metal and being done in your kiln. So this particular furnace is pretty simple. You just turn it on and it'll tell you what temperature it's going to, and the top one is the current temperature of inside of it. I set it to 975 Celsius. There is no Fahrenheit on this thing, so you need to figure out what Celsius you need to melt silver, which is, I think it was 960. So I just do a little bit over it and it's good. And you can see it's starting to raise already, and I'm going to turn that off so it doesn't start heating. But that's pretty much all you need to do with this. So when it comes to my 3D printer options and setup, I kind of have an overkill amount. I have 6 different printers that I've made videos about each one of them, but right now I am printing on the Elegoo Mars Pro 2, the standard Elegoo Mars. I'm using the Photon Mono and the Creality. I don't remember all the numbers behind that one. It's really badly named, but it works really good. So basically the 2 top shelves is what I'm using. So when it comes to 3D printers, you can spend a ton of money on them and they all have different results and stuff like that, but these are the lower end ones that you can get that will make pretty good to really nice results. There are big differences between a lot of them, like this mono one up here and the Elegoo Mars 2 Pro are both mono printers, so they print basically 2 to 3 times faster than these two, and their screens should last longer. They also cost a little bit more, but if it's going to last longer in the long run, it's going to make up for it. So just keep that in mind. I have links to my videos on these going way more into detail on them, but that's just an overview in case you haven't seen them. All right, it has been 13 hours, and now it is finally time to open this up and cast what may or may not work. So we'll find out. So I just need to open this. We're going to Put it over here and not drop it. There we go. And then we're going to turn our vacuum on to the chamber and flip it on. Watch your gauge, make sure it actually is sucking in oxygen, or sucking everything in and making vacuum. And we're going to take our super hot crucible and just pour it in. And I'm gonna let it sit there and vacuum for a little bit. And you can see that it's all in there now. Release the pressure. So now I can actually remove this and let it cool down a bit. So basically you want to let this cool down to the point where the button or the top part that you see of the metal is no longer glowing. It's still going to be super hot, so do not touch this. But you just need to get it cooled down enough that everything has solidified on the inside. And then we're going to quench it into a bucket of water, and it's basically just going to blow all the plaster away, and it will leave us with our pieces, if everything worked properly. All right, so here goes nothing. So now all you have to do is search around for your piece, and here it is. And it looks like we lost one of the pieces, but that's okay. All right, so let's check out what happened here. So you can see that the Mandalorian part came out fine, and the little scarab didn't stick on well enough and came free probably when I was doing the vacuum chamber with this. And you can actually see in some of the leftover plaster. If you look right there, you can see the outline of the pendant, and it kind of just broke off, it looks like. Which this is totally fine. It's a learning experience, and I would rather be able to show you that you need to make sure that things are stuck than you having to go through all this and learn the hard way. But at least we got one good piece out of this, and we're going to clean it up now. It does have some flaws on it. Like all right here is a bunch of leftover soot and a little bit in the top right here. But for the most part, it came out pretty good. And I think these are pretty much surface level, so I can probably grind that down and make it look nice. I'm still working to get to the point where I don't have to do that, but it's a lot of trial and error to find out the right settings and burnouts for this. All right, so we need to cut this off of its sprue now. And to do this, you just need a jeweler saw, or you can use some clippers that can actually cut through this, but I don't have any. So when cutting the sprues and stuff off, you want to use like a size 5 or something bigger, because it'll just make short work of these. If you use something smaller, it's going to take a lot longer, and it might dole out before you get through everything. So I will just cut these, because it's going to be hard to get in there with a saw. There we go. That should be easier to get to. And then we just need to cut the bottom one off real quick. So there we go, got them apart now. So now the time-consuming part, which is cleaning up all of this.
Hard to ignore all the things we say. I wish I could change it. A little shaky. Our emotions got the best of us lately. I got issues, yeah, you got them too. Our feelings too bruised to fight. We can say a lot in a little bit. Pressure in our minds made us throw a fit. But got that kind of love and that ain't counterfeit. It's foolish and useless without your love.
All right, so here it is, all done, cleaned up, patinaed, and to my liking with the finish. It is not perfect by any means. If you look at the sides, there's lots of little divots and stuff here from the casting just not burning off properly. And I need to mess with settings more and dial this in. But as you can see, it did come out, and this is totally usable. only because of the styling of this type of ring. But if this was a really delicate, fine ring, this wouldn't fly. It would have too many imperfections in it. So that being said, I'm going to be doing a lot more testing and using different materials. I have some on the way now that should print and burn off a lot better than the stuff I was using, and we'll see. It is really cool though that you can 3D print something and then turn it into a piece of metal using the right tools. And like I said, I have a week of experience with the casting and even using the weird resins that I'm using to do this. Just a week, but I have the proper tools to do it. So that helps a lot. But as you can see, still not perfect. So I'm going to keep working on this and make sure I can get things to come out perfectly. And I will let you guys know how I do it and make sure to supply you with all the settings and information needed to do so for yourselves. So thank you again everyone that sent me the files to use for this, and I'm going to be using them going forward to make sure I can tweak the settings and figure everything out. And I'll link to all your guys' stuff in the description. If you're looking for anything that I used in this video, everything will be in the links in the description or in the first pinned comments. So if you want to see more videos like this one, or just other jewelry related videos, subscribe to my channel and it'll notify you whenever I post a new video, which should be about every week. If you have any questions about what I did or any corrections to what I did, leave a comment. I would love to hear from you. And like the video if you liked it. Other than that, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.